I'm Danielle Marivette Hernandez, and I'm here bringing you a special secret edition of the Cinderella Circle, Cinderella's To Be. Yes, this is Cinderella Circle Bridgerton style. Now, I know last time I said that's the end of the Cinderella Circle, but that's because that's the end of Cinderellas that are made that I'm bringing to share with you. Today, I want to share with you Cinderellas that will be made, even if they're unofficial Cinderellas. And that's what brings us to Bridgerton, which has swept the nation. Now, season 2 is coming, and that's not what we're here to talk about today, because that one's not based on a fairy tale. But season 3 is based on the Bridgerton book, An Offer from a Gentleman, which focuses on Benedict Bridgerton and his fairy tale romance with one Sophie Beckett. So what can we expect to see in Bridgerton season 3? Well, according to the book, this is how it's going to go. Our Cinderella, named Sophie, is the bastard daughter of an earl. And in Regency England, to be a bastard is to be excluded, not recognized. You are not eligible to associate with the ton. So we'll actually be seeing the other side of Bridgerton. Think upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey and the servants. Sophie Beckett is relegated to the role of servant. The book starts with her being brought to the earl as a child, and he's given a message, "This is your daughter," but it's a bastard daughter. So he takes her on as his ward. He can't recognize her as his heir because she's illegitimate. She was born out of wedlock, and she's raised as his ward, which is fine until about the time when she's 11, 10. The earl remarries a woman with 2 daughters of her own. The stepmother's name is Araminta. The stepdaughters' names are Posy and Rosamund. And they know exactly that the earl's ward is not exactly the earl's ward. So that's where the stepmother gets a grievance with our Cinderella, Sophie. And throughout the years of being married to the earl, Araminta never conceives to give him a male heir. So when he dies unexpectedly, when Sophie is 14, she's left, she being the stepmother, she's left with tenuous ties to the will. And she learns that the earl included Sophie in his will, even though Sophie is a bastard. And this infuriates Araminta. So she doesn't tell the truth about the will. In the will, he leaves her some money for her dowry and to be taken care of until the age she's 21, in which case she will become eligible to access her own money. Araminta tells Sophie none of that. She says the earl left her out of the will. I'm going to take you on out of the goodness of my heart and relegate Sophie to servant. And that's how we get to modern day Bridgerton, in which Sophie has been a servant in the house. She's 21 now. She is essentially a slave because she's an unpaid servant with nowhere to go and has to do the role of like 5 other servants. Rosamund is the obnoxious stepsister. Posy is a bit more sweethearted but clueless about being aware of another person's circumstance. Well, the tale begins on the night of the Bridgerton Ball. It's going to be a masquerade, you see. And Sophie is helping Rosamund, Posy, and Araminta get ready. She mentions she would like to go. They all laugh at her. And Sophie is so sweet, so kind. She just wants sisterhood and family, and she really tries to make it work, despite being in a relationship with abusive women. She's overpromised. She promises to do Posy's hair and take in Araminta's dress and restyle Rosamund's as well, all in the same night. She's like, I could do this, faster than a hummingbird's wings. Well, after she finishes getting ready, she decides to read Whistledown for the night. She loves reading Lady Whistledown. It's her one connection to the ton. And when she goes to her room, she finds all the servants have gotten a hot bath ready for her. And they're like, it's not right that you don't get to go to these things. You're the true heir. So tonight, we're dressing you up and you're going to that masquerade. And Sophie is aghast. She's like, what? Excuse? But they dress her up. They pull out a dress from the attic that belonged to her grandmother, her So her illegitimate grandmother, whatever, it's clearly her grandmother. She's just from one side. So the dress, she shows up in a rococo gown, so think 1760s, and it is flare at the sleeves. It's all silver and has those wide hip panniers, and she comes wearing a mask. And when she arrives at the ball, Benedict notices her right away. He has never seen this woman before, and she's not acting like a traditional woman of the ton. She's happy to be there. She's just taking it all in, like, oh my God, this is what it's like to be at a Bridgerton ball. The food, the dancing, the gowns. I'm in a beautiful gown. So he goes right to her side after asking Penelope to dance and then abandoning Penelope for that dance. So whoopsie. And then they have one night of just beautiful bonding. He asks her to dance and she tells him she doesn't know how to dance. And he's like, what? How does a proper lady not know how to dance? And Sophie, in her mind, is like, well, I'm not exactly a proper lady, am I? But out loud, she's very secretive and mysterious, which lures him in. And so they go off to a private thing. He says he'll teach her how to dance. Yeah, he will. If I allow you to teach me how to dance, where will you conduct the lesson? So he takes her to a private terrace, and she doesn't know who he is, which blows his mind because everyone knows who the Bridgertons are. And he likes that. She doesn't know who he is. It gives him a chance to be himself and not just one of the Bridgerton brothers. So now they're in a private seclusion. They have a dance. They talk. She won't tell him her name. In fact, she won't tell him anything about herself because technically, crashing this ball as a servant is illegal, a criminal offense, and she doesn't want to be, caught and hung. So she tells him nothing, and he's captivated. Who is this mysterious woman? It's love at first sight for Benedict, and the more he talks with her, and the more she asks questions. What's your favorite color? Blue. Why? What? No one's asked me why my favorite color was blue before. Benedict is an artist, and so they have this connection of that artist soul, understanding things from another level. So a romantic dance. In this case, instead of the shoes, which belong to the stepmother, they're not glass, they're just regular shoes, it's a glove. He slips off her glove, and when midnight comes and she runs away, that's all he has left is the glove. Now the story continues. She gets caught the next day because Benedict, using the glove, goes over to the estate seeking out Sophie. But he does not know Sophie is a servant. What he does know is that the crest on that glove led him to this estate. So he meets Araminta, he meets the stepdaughters, and he has a very brief visit with them before realizing these are not the people that I'm looking for. And he leaves. Araminta notices his intent on the glove and puts two and two together because of some scuffs that she found on those shoes, and she fires Sophie on the spot after locking her in a closet. So now Sophie is kicked out of the house with nowhere to go and no way to make her own. So she steals some shoe clips to sell for the money, and then the story picks up 2 years later. Now I wonder if they'll keep that when they do Bridgerton season 3. But 2 years later, Sophie is now working at an estate outside of London, and Benedict is at one of those raging parties with the orgies and the gambling and the prostitutes. But it's a few years after the first novel, and he's a little tired of it. He's over this scene. He's like, you know what? I'm not a young stud who wants to do this anymore. He's also not feeling so great. He just got over a cold. So he decides to leave. He's looking for the host to bid his farewell, and wouldn't you know it, he finds Sophie in a terrible circumstance, because Sophie, working at that house, has been under the watchful eye of the lusty son of the owners. So the son has been making unwelcome advances to our darling Sophie Beckett, and when I say unwelcome, I mean assault. He keeps trying to capture her. And that night she decided, it's time for me to run away from this estate. Unfortunately, they were all drunk, rowdy, and friends. So now she's trapped in a circle of 4 men with very evil intent. This could very well have been the worst night of Sophie's life. And then out of nowhere, Benedict Bridgerton appears. Benedict Bridgerton, the man that she was romanced by 2 years ago at that masquerade, appears out of nowhere and rescues her because the host that he was looking to say goodbye to is right there. So instead of saying goodbye, he ends up punching the guy out, pulling Sophie out of that situation, and telling her that he will help her find a new establishment and let's get out of here. He has a nearby cottage, but oh darn, a torrential rain begins to fall and they're trapped in the rain together. And remember that I mentioned Benedict was a little bit sick recently? Well, he's about to have a relapse. So by the time they get to the estate, he is quite unwell. In fact, she's got to drive the horses for a little while. I love that scene. I can't wait. So they get inside. They're soaked to the bone. He gives her a spare set of his clothing. So now Sophie is in a man's shirt and pants that she has to hold up because they're too big for her. She's very slight. She's quite petite. Benedict is in a raging fever, so we get the traditional fever scene. She nurses him back to health. Nobody is at the cottage, so they're alone for an evening. The housekeepers who look after the cottage happen to be away that night, so they're alone. Sophie finds a sketchbook where Benedict has drawn the lady in silver, this mysterious woman whom he fell in love with and disappeared. And she's shocked. She had no idea that he's ever thought of her. And she, of course, has been dreaming of that magical night ever since. But she's conflicted because he didn't recognize her. 2 years of living on her own has transformed her appearance. She cut her hair to sell it so that she could afford a ticket out of London. She has been paid minimum wages, so she's underfed and exhausted. And of course, she is a servant. The first time he met her was as an elegant woman at a ball, so he does not put 2 and 2 together. Now, the next day, when the housekeepers come home, they're a husband and wife pair, they find the 2, and they take Sophie on as a guest. They'll hear nothing of her working for him. Benedict has been nursed through his fever, and so for a few days they convalesce at the cottage. They establish a friendship. She reads to him. He's charmed by her. And then he realizes he's more than charmed by her. And this, my friends, is where season 3 will become problematic, because Benedict rescued her from a situation where she was being pursued by someone that she was not interested in. And then he realizes he is also interested in her. And so he is reluctant to let her go. The primary difference here is that she's already in love with Benedict. Theoretically, she's been dreaming about him for 2 years, but she doesn't really know him as a person, as a man. So now we develop this frustrating tango, this love-hate. He doesn't tell her right away that his feelings for her have changed. No, instead, he's like, you know what I need? A cold swim. A cold swim would take care of this. I'm out of here. And he sneaks off. And Sophie, unused to having time to herself, is exploring the grounds. So while Benedict is naked in a lake, Sophie is traveling, and who does she happen upon except Benedict Bridgerton? Naked in a lake. Goodness, my word. Heavens to Betsy. And, well, she's only human. So she definitely spies on him a little bit. And then he captures her. He catches her spying on him. And this is where they have their first romantic interlude. He puts clothes on before he approaches. So there's a little romance in the woods. And he asks her to be his mistress. The one thing she has refused to ever do, because she is a bastard child and she does not want bastard children because it ruined her life, and she does not want to do that to any future children. So she tells him no. And Benedict is not used to no. Excuse me, no? No? You would rather be a servant than be my mistress? I can shower you in jewels, in fabulous clothing. I can set you up with a great apartment. And Sophie stands by her word. She says no. I will not be your mistress. I will not be anyone's mistress. I will not be cast aside and bear bastard children and be a secret woman. That's been my whole life before this. She doesn't tell him that part, but that's how she's feeling. And now, this is part 2 of season 3 becoming problematic, because when she tells him no, he doesn't take it well. So he says, well, listen, you either come back with me or I will report you as a thief. Now this is dangerous because thieves can be hung. She's being threatened with her life. So suddenly the man who was her rescuer and her love interest becomes her captor and her enemy? Oh no. Oh yes. So he takes her back to London to find her a place in his mother's household. At this point in season 3, in book 3, they have moved out of the big, beautiful Bridgerton home because season 2 is all about Anthony and his love story. So he'll be moving in there with his Viscountess. In this new location, Benedict brings Sophie home, brings her to Violet Bridgerton and says, this is Sophie, can we find her a position as a lady's maid? And Violet is taken aback. She hasn't heard from her son in days, because he was off being sick secretly after going to that party. So she takes Sophie on. And they have this interview. And Violet knows, Mama ain't no fool. She's like, look, clearly you're more than just a servant. But Sophie is used to lying about herself. So she gives her the spiel she gives everyone. Oh, I'm from outside London. Oh, you wouldn't have heard of it. Oh, don't worry, my mother was a housekeeper. Yes, I'm very well learned. Because this is the thing, she has an upper class accent. She gets caught reading the French titles. Violet is paying attention. So when Violet asks Benedict, so who is she? Benedict is less than truthful. He tells her that he found her at that party in a terrible circumstance, that he wanted her to have a safe working environment. So for the next couple of weeks, Sophie works at Violet Bridgerton's place. She takes care of Eloise and Hyacinth and Francesca. She does their hair. And Benedict is kind of stalking her. He keeps showing up places, trying to flirt with her. They have a couple of rendezvous. But then, this happens. While in London, Sophie is spotted by Posy, the stepsister, the sweeter one. But still. And she's terrified because she left under bad terms. She left having stolen something. And remember, you can be hung for being a thief. So, from a distance, in a carriage, Posy and Sophie see each other and she gesticulates like, please say nothing. Don't. Posy doesn't. However, now with this new terror under her skin, Sophie doesn't know what to do. She needs to escape. She needs to escape her intoxicating relationship with Benedict. She needs to escape her terror of Araminta. And she also does not want to leave. So for the first time, Sophie is experiencing peace and comfort because at the Bridgertons, everyone is family. They invite her to sit with them during tea time. They laugh and talk with her. Sophie has never experienced such positive female relationships. She has sisterhood. She has a mother figure. And even though she's there as the role of servant, they're not treating her like a servant. They're treating her like a friend. And it's breaking her heart because she's so used to excluding herself, not being a part of that world, hiding, that she has convinced herself she can never have this. And remember, she refuses to be Benedict's mistress. She will stand by that. However, once she's caught by Posy and Benedict finds her in a state of terror, just frozen, she tells him she needs to get out of there. He takes her back to his apartments where they just talk for a while. But then they bond and they communicate and, well, wouldn't you know it, the passions just overflow and then romance really blooms. Remember, this is a romance novel. This is not your typical Cinderella tale. This one gets torrid, okay? It gets spicy. Intimate relations do occur. I mean, have you seen an episode of Bridgerton? Have you read one of the novels? You know what I'm saying. However, Benedict thinks this means, huzzah! Sophie has agreed to be my mistress, and that's not how Sophie felt about it. Sophie was overcome by passions. She just needed to experience him at least once in her life, but she still refuses to be his mistress. She refuses to move in with him. She refuses to become an isolated, kept woman, which pisses Benedict off. How dare you give yourself to me without giving yourself to me? And then Sophie says, well, what happens when you get married? And he's like, but that's not fair. I have to get married. I have to produce heirs. And Sophie points out, so that's fair for you, but I have to live under these circumstances. So Benedict is twisted and bitter. He doesn't know what to do because it would be quite scandalous for him as the son of a viscount to marry a servant. In modern era, that means nothing, but in Regency England, that was a huge step down, mighty scandal. It could sully the prospects for your siblings who are unmarried. And remember, the Bridgerton family is huge. There are still plenty of siblings who are unmarried. Meanwhile, Sophie is in despair because now she's gone and slept with Benedict, and she's super concerned because, well, you know, babies are contagious, and that was the one thing she never wanted to do, but we're only human. Sophie, my love, my darling, you're only human. Experience life. Well, it all culminates when one day, during one of the tea gatherings, Penelope comes to visit. And remember, spoiler alert, if you've seen season 1 all the way through, then you know Penelope has a secret identity as Lady Whistledown. However, if you've only read the books, by the 3rd book, that has not been revealed yet. And Penelope recognizes something familiar about Sophie. Remember, Benedict had asked Penelope to dance and then abandoned her, just ditched her to go to the woman in silver. And Sophie can tell that she's been found out, which of course elevates her need to escape. Now Hyacinth at this point is growing up. She's a young teenager now, about 14, and asks for Sophie's help babysitting some kids. So later that night, they're babysitting some Bridgerton cousins. They're playing blind man's bluff. Sophie is the blind man. Benedict walks in and sees Sophie covered from here, just like she was at the masquerade. And he has that aha moment, like his worlds come crashing together, like, oh my God, this whole time Sophie and the lady in silver have been the same person. And he has been very, very conflicted because ever since he met the woman in silver, she became his ideal. She was the woman he wanted to marry. And his passions for Sophie were conflicting, not just because she was a servant, but because he felt like he was betraying the lady in silver, whose name he never even got. So to find out they are one and the same fills him with fury because he feels like Sophie's been lying to him. And a little bit she has, but not for devious reasons, simply because he never recognized her and she didn't know how to bring it up. So they have a huge fight. Sophie runs away, and oh gosh, wouldn't you know it, on that same day, Araminta is out and about and aware that Sophie's in town. And so Sophie is caught between a rock and a hard place, and she gets arrested because Araminta says, stop, thief, and what do we know happens to thieves? So Sophie gets thrown in jail. Benedict doesn't know what happened. None of the Bridgertons know what happened. Sophie had just put in, like, she was like, I've got to go, I got to quit. So they know that she was quitting and they think that she just left. They don't know she's been arrested, except Lady Whistledown saw the whole thing because she lives across the street from the Bridgertons, and she published it. She published this public arrest of one of the Bridgerton servants in the newspaper. So they get the news right away. They go off to the jailhouse, and the jail scene is so incredible. That's where all the information comes out. That's where Sophie and Araminta have their confrontation. Sophie wants to know why. Why do you hate me? Why? And Araminta is like, because he loved you. And Araminta is just like steeping in malice. She loves to see Sophie suffer. Remember, abusive family, escaping from grief. These are all Cinderella themes. But what she didn't expect was that Sophie had developed a relationship with the Bridgertons, and the Bridgertons are in much higher standing than she, an ex-countess, is in. So, Benedict professes his love, declares her his fiancé, they get her out with the warden, Violet arranges a deal. Essentially, Violet blackmails Araminta into saying that Sophie is a cousin, an elevated status cousin. Otherwise, she will go get the solicitors because Araminta violated the will, a legally binding contract that she was supposed to follow, by never giving Sophie the dowry. She spent it all instead. She never paid her. She turned her into a servant and then accused her of thievery. Posey is another person who comes in to save the day because she does not stick up for her mother. She sticks up for Sophie. So Posey and Araminta have a falling out, but Sophie, who has always just wanted family and to be included and to not be alone anymore, invites Posey to be with them, with the Bridgertons. They go off together. Benedict and Sophie finally talk about that night at the masquerade. And then, of course, it's a romance novel. They will be living happily ever after. And I love it so much. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to be in it. This is like my dream. Like, yes. Chris Van Dusen, Shondaland, hello, I'm writing to you now. I very much would like to be included in your world of Bridgerton. I have been involved in romance novels for nearly a decade, and you're doing the thing I want to do. How do I audition for you? I am your Sophie Beckett. Let's talk, darling. I assure you, 15 minutes with me and you will get a read for my energy and you will know Sophie is just shining through me. She's a bastard. I'm also a bastard. I'm a bastard Brit because I'm Puerto Rican American, and Puerto Ricans, I mean, we're the bastards of the world. Everyone's conquered Puerto Rico. Don't worry, accent work, it's just called training, darling. Trust me, you want to see me in a dress. So stay tuned, folks. Season 3 is coming. Bridgerton is incredible. Go read An Offer from a Gentleman. This way we can all compare the book to what the producers and writers have in store for us. Thank you so much. This has been an Impromptu Cinderella Circles, Cinderella's To Be.